Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to our continuing study in the book of Genesis. We'll be looking at chapters 12 through 50. We will pick up where Mark Shipp left off 2 weeks ago. We now switch to our slides, if I can. So as Mark mentioned, Genesis 1 through 12 is a book of beginnings. We have two stories of creation. In the first, God is presented or is portrayed as transcendent creator, and he makes man as male and female in his own image and likeness. So we have here the basis of human worth, sanctity, and dignity. In chapter 2, a second story, God is immanent. He builds a woman for the man who is alone. What a gift. And then chapter 3, sin enters God's world, and there are consequences, repercussions. Universal violence fills the world, fills the earth, chapter 6. And God is sorry that he made human beings. And he undoes creation with a universal flood. Chapter 11, the tower builders try to scale the heights of heaven. This is a total inward focus. It's all about self-advancement, self-promotion. And so God scatters them and determines to start over with one man, one family, one nation to bless the rest. Israel will be a light to the world, blessing the families of earth. That is God's plan and purpose. Genesis 11 has the genealogy of Shem, who is Noah's son, Shem. And it concludes with in that line, it concludes with the generations of Terah. Terah had 3 sons, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Abram marries Sarai. And when Haran dies, he adopts Haran's son, Lot. And the first main thing that we learn about Sarai is that she was barren and she had no child. And that's going to be significant as the story unfolds. Terah moves his family from Ur of the Chaldeans, and you can see Ur circled in red there on the right, at the lower right of your screen. And he will take his family to Haran, up there at the top, north of, up in the Mesopotamia, Padan Aram area. And notice the emphasis of the inspired writer on family in these stories of Abram. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. Notice the relationships that are emphasized. And they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. So we come to chapter 12, and we have the call of God. The Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto the land that I will show thee. So here the challenge, but with it comes a promise, an incredible promise. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and I will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and him that curseth thee I will curse. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So this fulsome promise of nationhood and personal blessing, universal blessing, and implicit, I think, the promise of land in verse 1. And so at the ripe old age of 75, Abram sets out for Canaan with, quote, Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son. So again, the emphasis on family, Abraham as father, Sarah or Sarai as mother. And we're going to see the indispensable role of woman as wife and mother in the beginning of God's new people, his nation, and the importance of marriage itself. Well, not as soon as he arrives in Canaan, there's another challenge. The Canaanites live there. Abram cannot go with Canaanite customs and ways. They had different gods, and they were getting worse. But in the midst of this, God reassures Abram and says, "Unto thy seed will I give this land." So that assurance again. But there's another challenge. There was famine. Famine was severe, and Abram must go to Egypt. Now, he tells Sarai, he says, "Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, so that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee." He says, when the Egyptians see you, they're going to kill me and take you to Pharaoh. And she agrees, and his fears are well-founded. The Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. Now, the little word very or exceedingly is actually a noun in Hebrew, and it means strength or power. And it's the last word in the sentence, so it gets a lot of emphasis. Sarai was beautiful. At age 65, she was a knockout. Well, Pharaoh's henchmen take Sarai to the royal harem, and brother, quote unquote, brother Abram is treated well for her sake. He receives sheep, oxen, asses, servants, and camels. But God doesn't like it. This is no way to treat your wife. And he intervenes in spite of Abram, unknown to Abram. The Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And the pagan ruler rebukes the man of God. "What is this that thou hast done unto me?" And again, notice the emphasis on the wifely relationship and importance. "Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now, therefore, behold, thy wife, take her and go." Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the Negev, into the south country, the region south of Judah. Sarai is a married woman. Her wifehood is inviolate. Marriage is sacred to God. Do you think Abram learned a lesson here? Well, he's going to do the same thing in chapter 20. And then this comment from Leon Cass, that even though you can choose a wife, you cannot choose what wife means. She is not transmutable into a sister or a concubine just because it serves your purposes. And so chapter 13, Abram, another challenge. Abram is very rich in livestock, silver and gold, and Lot as well has flocks, herds, and tents, so that the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together. When Sandy and I were in Africa last time, we were told that the elephants had become so great, so numerous, that the habitat couldn't support the inhabitants, and the elephants had to walk many miles just to get water and food. So Abram says to Lot, "Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. And he graciously gives his nephew first choice of the land. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan, this well-watered, fertile soil of the river valley. And he moves his tent toward Sodom. But it's not good, because the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners against the Lord exceedingly. And once more, that word comes at the end of the sentence to show the depth of the problem. So Abram has given the best land, the rich soil, to his nephew, and they separate. I wonder what's going to, Abram was maybe thinking Lot was going to be the heir. Abram takes the rocky land among the Canaanites and Perizzites, and once more God reassures him. The Lord said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him, so again, this is important, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. So God's promise of abounding posterity and an enduring home. I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for unto thee I will give it. So notice here the counter or the contrast to the consequences from chapter 3, where God said, for dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. So here, Abram's offspring will be as the dust of the earth. So quite a reversal there. Abram moves his tent to the poor, rocky soil of the highlands, the oaks of Mamre at Hebron, built an altar to the Lord. Genesis 14, another crisis. The 5 local Canaanite cities rebel against their powerful overlords in Mesopotamia, 4 kings. And these chieftains, overlords from the east, come, invade the region, wreaking havoc before reaching the vassals themselves that were the Canaanite kings. And he just goes down the east side of the Jordan, attacking the Rephaim and the Zuzim and the Emim and the Horites all the way down to El Paran, and then back north against the Amalekites and the Amorites, striking and defeating them. Powerful. And so the Canaanite kings join battle in the valley of Siddim near the Dead Sea, and they fall before the enemy. The kings from the east plunder Sodom and Gomorrah. They take Lot, Abram's brother's son, his goods, and leave. Well, a refugee escapes, and he tells Abram the Hebrew, living there by the oaks of Mamre, and Mamre was an Amorite chieftain, the brother of Eshcol and Aner, his allies. And so Abram has formed an alliance. And when he hears that his brother or kinsman Lot was taken captive, he leads his trained men, 318 of them, as far as Dan. Abram was prepared for battle, and he had trained his men to use force, if necessary, to defend what was theirs. And so he goes all the way to Dan, and in a cunning strategy at night, he and his men defeat these superior forces and chase them all the way to Hobah, which is off the map, north of Damascus. And then he brings back his brother, his kinsman Lot, the women, and the rest. On his return, Abram is blessed by the priest king Melchizedek, the king of Salem, which I think is Jerusalem. And this, I believe, foreshadows the reign of David at Jerusalem. In Hebrews 5-7, the priest king Melchizedek also foreshadows Christ, our high priest in heaven. So we come to chapter 15. I think maybe some time has gone by. God again reassures Abram, "Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield. Thy reward shall be exceedingly great." Abram has risked his life. 10 years have gone by since the promise was first given. Sarai is still infertile. And he says, "O Lord God, what wilt thou give me? See, I shall die childless. And the one in charge of my house is Eliezer of Damascus, this servant. Behold, to me thou hast given no seed, no descendants, and lo, my steward will be my heir." But God corrects him. He takes him outside and says, "Look up. Your own son will be your heir. Look towards heaven and count the stars, if thou be able to number them." And he said unto him, "So shall thy seed be." So again, another promise. And Abram trusted in the Lord, and the Lord counted it to him for righteousness. God reckons or credits Abram's faith as uprightness, justness, as right standing before God. And so in this deathly present, Abram trusts the future to God. Faith lets gifts be given. God's goodness flows to those who trust God's future. In a barren world, Abram trusts God to overcome the present. Those thoughts from Walter Brueggemann. So, verses 7-21. Maybe it's here that time passes. Anyway, it's at this point that God makes a covenant with Abram. He says, "I am the Lord that brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give thee this land to inherit it." Yet the threats remain from the east, and the Canaanite kings are still there. And Abram says, "O Lord God, how shall I know that I shall inherit it?" And so God tells Abram to cut sacrificial animals in two, a heifer, a goat, a ram, and lay the halves opposite each other. And then Abram falls into a dark, deep sleep full of dread. And God speaks to him in that darkness. God says, "Know of a surety, know for sure, that thy seed shall be strangers, sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. Your descendants will be strangers, aliens in a country not their own, slaves." Why? Well, there's a mystery. Obviously, God's ways are inscrutable. But I do believe that there was a divine purpose at work here. How can we know the benefit? Is there a benefit in hardship, in trial, in delay, having to wait? How will the Israelites see the land once it's finally theirs? "But as for thee, thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. And in the fourth generation, they shall come hither." They will come here. "For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." I want to come back to that last sentence. Well, it came to pass that when the sun went down, there was thick darkness, and behold, a smoking furnace, like a brazier or a fire pot, and a flame, burning torch, passed between the pieces, the carcasses. And on that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, Unto thy seed I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. So it seems that in the ancient Near East, when two parties wanted to make a covenant, they would cut animals, sacrificial animals, in two and walk between the parts of each carcass. In that way, calling down the same fate on either of them if they broke the covenant. So this is one way of God's showing how serious he is. The smoking fire pot and the flaming torch represent or signify his presence. He's absolutely serious about this binding arrangement and the promises that go with it, in spite of the present circumstances and those who inhabit, who live there. Now I want to come back to verse 16. The iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Again, there is a mystery to the nature of God. Transcends human understanding. But here, I think there is an explanation or a reason, even maybe a justification for the coming conquest of Canaan. But it must be understood in light of God's awareness, his foreknowledge. The iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. In other words, the sins of the Canaanites will multiply. They will mount up. The inner and outer corruption will get so bad that they're lost beyond healing. The physician will have to do surgery and cut out the cancer. We just need to remember that God is the author, the giver and sustainer of life. Life comes to us as a gift. We didn't make ourselves. Our bodies aren't really ours. They're God's. And our Creator, who is good, who is love, who is holy, knows what's best for us, his creatures. He will bless the good and at some point end the harm. So when it comes to running the world, God knows every heart. We do not. God knows all the circumstances. We do not. God knows what they're going to do, or at least I sure think he can. God knows the best time. We do not. God knows the right measure, the right amount. We do not. And God will work out his purposes for our good and for his glory. So I wanted to illustrate this, how children maybe could be irretrievable. So Mo, the class bully, says to Calvin, I'm going to pound you at recess, Twinkie. Why? It's no contest. You've got the entire advantage. What could you possibly get out of pounding someone completely defenseless? It's fun. Oh, he's a sportsman. Well, I wanted to share one last story before concluding. This comes from a commentator who I read occasionally. He talked about his childhood. He grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood. He went to the public schools, and he remembers this thuggish 12-year-old boy who stole things, who beat people up. One day he just got tired of it, and he went over to him and he said, this big kid, he said, wow, that's Wayne's binder you have. Yeah, it is. Wow, you kicked Santine. You knocked him down. You hit him in the head. I saw you do it. Yeah, I did. Then you called Mrs. Smith, the teacher's aide, a bad word, right to her face. I'm happy to. Then he interrupted him and he said, and what are you going to do about it? And the commentator said, well, I'm going to go talk to the principal. He said, oh, you're a little ratter. I'm going to get you. I'm going to get your family. My family's been in prison. We're going to come after you. So now what are you going to do about it? And so the author says, I ended up getting in a fight because he thought it was the only way to get out of it. It was a knockdown, drag out brawl. And it taught me something. He said, it's, some people you just can't deal with. Sometimes people are broken beyond healing. And and this was a 12-year-old. So we have to trust God to handle things that we can't and to do what's best. So in conclusion, God is ever faithful, ever true, ever worthy of our trust. Even when the promises appear in danger, in jeopardy, even when things don't work out the way we expect, even when things don't make sense, and even when innocent people suffer, God will still honor his promises and accomplish his purposes. And it may be in a way we don't expect. It's even better than we imagine. And he will do it for our good, our ultimate good, and for his glory. So this is a win-win. I like stories with happy endings. And brothers and sisters, we are in one. May the Lord bless you and keep you.